Yo, brother, I can definitely do a video on this, of course, but let me just come in very quickly here and just share a little bit. So often, you experienced a lot of shame and judgment growing up, right? And essentially, there was a lot of repression of who you wanted to be, how you wanted to express, and who you were in the world. You know, what your needs were, what your curiosities were. There was an identity that you had to fit into, right? To show the world that you're this type of person. You're either a survivor or a fighter or you're a rough guy from Glasgow, or whatever it was, right? Or you're your father's son, and whatever the identity characteristics or expressions were of that person that you needed to be. And there's often parts of us that become repressed and just not seen and shown in the world. And often, they run through lines to shadow expressions, and the shadow can come out in many different ways. And potentially in this way, it came out in, I don't want to say sexual deviancy, it could have been that, but it came out in potentially in other ways as well, I'm sure. And other ways could have been compensation with intelligence and so forth, right? But otherwise, it could have come out with, could have just been this very profound curiosity for sex as well, right? Or you created identity or power structures within yourself or a sense of control through sex, and kink could have been part of that. So let me be really clear on something. I'm not saying that all kink is bad, or all kink is an expression of the shadow. Not at all, right? But maybe in part of you needing to express yourself, it just started to come out in sex, which is more private, whether it's sex with self or sex with another person, right? But it's still more private, and you're able to have these fantasies, these dreams, these wild expressions, this sort of freedom of being in the world, right? Without inhibition and without restriction and constraint. So what I'm guessing and what I'm seeing is that this woman, as well as your previous ex-fiance, probably activated this part of you, right? Like brought it out of you. But the association as well in the past for you, and you'll continue to bring that association out through the shame that you continue to feel. And this is where the self-forgiveness at deeper levels, and not feeling the shame for your sexual desires and for wanting to be loved and wanting to be needed and having these sexual fantasies and dreams, and whether it's kink, whether it's aspects of kink or whatever, like the decoupling of that being shameful is very important for you. But what these women did was they activated that part of you. And so the reason why maybe as a young boy or as a young man, like you gravitated towards this type of sex was because the pleasure was very intense, right? It was very exciting, it was very alive for you. And in it being alive, what happened was that you were able to be in greater control, to see parts of you that were unseen. And so any time that a woman will bring this out in you, or also has this part of its wounding, part of its temperament, part of its being, right? Just simple being. It's not all negative or shadow. But when the woman brings this out of you, there's this deep attachment that's formed because the internal unconscious association is, oh, this person sees me. I can be me. But the interesting thing is that when you look back historically, every single one of those relationships that were highly sexually charged and passionate also came with extreme volatility, also came with extreme behavioral issues, relational friction, like intense relational friction, intense sexuality. Often the greater our pain, the greater our pleasure needs to be. So you never would have attracted this woman, right? Now we're going ipso facto into another area. You never would have attracted this woman in your life to heal the thing that you need to heal. So the question is, what is that really needs to be healed or equilibrated or neutralized within yourself without the passionate sex? So outside of the passionate sex and the kink and the activation and the sexual expression, she activated something in you. She brought out something in you. What did she bring out? Now, she brought out something in you, but what did she bring out as well? What did she uncover or lift the lid on that still needs to be healed? Because then go to the friction. So the sex was great, the passion was there, but what about the friction? So the gaslighting, the manipulation, the control. Where did that happen? Where did all those things that happened in that relationship that are similar to the previous relationship, the previous ex-fiance, right? Because it was a very similar dynamic. So just look at patterns. That thing that it brought out, the friction, the tension, where is that unhealed in your life? Where did you first experience that? With whom did you first experience that with? Now, I know you've done a lot of work with mother and father and family of origin. Are there layers to that for you? Maybe it's simple self-forgiveness. Maybe it's simple self-acceptance of who you are and loving those parts of you in ways that you haven't before. Whether it's through inner child work, deeper somatic work, sexual somatic work, whether it's through other modalities. The modalities aren't as important. They are, of course, but they're not as important. What's more important is how you're choosing to be with that and what's underneath the hypersexuality, or what's underneath the desire for sexuality, because we don't want to shame your sexuality either. And it was probably born out of a need to be seen and out of a need to avoid pain. Not 100% guaranteed, but probably. Now, can you reformulate that story? Can you reorientate yourself towards a greater path? Can you reorientate yourself towards greater truth, towards allowing that sexual expression to be healthy and therefore attracting someone that's connected to their healthy sexuality as well? So you needn't attract that intensity to still deal with the intensity that's underneath it. Because if you're still attracting it in your life, there's a dynamic there and a pattern playing out. There's something that's unhealed, unresolved, unseen. Sit with that, be with that, feel that, and don't rush that. Don't rush that. Because even the fear of, oh, I'm really ready to be in a relationship, or I really know what I want. And that's great that you know what you want, but don't let fear and retraction drive that, because your time is ticking, or who are you going to find, or you've done all this work, or is there more work to... Can you just settle into the sensation and the feeling of, I'm here in this. I'm here in this.